Hello and welcome to our video today. We are talking about the inner child archetype and its magnetics and also how it protects us from the fear of abandonment, which the child is regulating for us on a daily level. So my name is Elsa Kepi. You can find out about me on my website pleasureforhealth.com or on my retreat website ourceltichearth.com. And there's books and courses and coaching packages and options, great blogs and things to read and find out more information there. What drew me today to talk about the inner child was just what's coming up for me in the world today as far as the fear of not being part of the group, fear of being left behind, fear of being cast out. All of these fears are coming from a very interesting place in our psyche. And we all have inner child parts, possibly inner children, actually. I think we actually have many child parts, and these have been broken down over the years by many teachers into different types of child archetypes, whatever resonates with you. And you might have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of them. Some of them being like the invisible child, feeling like you're never seen. Harry Potter was a good example of this one. The orphan child, the one that it doesn't belong to your family, or you maybe actually were orphaned. Simba in The Lion King was a good example of this. And I was thinking Anne of Green Gables as well was an actual orphan. So the orphan child, good morning, Julie. The orphan child can be part of our inner children complex as well. We can also have an abandoned child or a wounded or abused child. I think that what I was just thinking of now was Tolkien, the writer of The Lord of the Rings, perhaps was considered kind of a wounded child. He lost both his parents quite young. The adult child is someone who had to grow up too soon. Often they have maybe parents that are addicts, or or a parent that's ill. They've had to take on the parenting role way too young. The magical child, the one that always has a positive outlook about everything, even when it's kind of fantastical and doesn't even make sense. And this is some examples might be Tiny Tim from A Christmas Carol, or maybe Anne Frank, who wrote Anne Frank's Diary, who just had such a optimistic outlook on humans, even given the horrendous circumstances she found herself in. The nature child, the one that sort of hides or finds solace in nature, might be Julie of the Wolves is a great story about a girl that lived with the wolves, or the Jungle Book, that kind of thing. The divine child, that is very connected to the source, God, however you want to do that. And I was thinking the Dalai Lama must have an interesting experience being put in that kind of godlike place right from a young age. And we call it the puer or puella aeternus, like the eternal child. Peter Pan being the obvious one, Michael Jackson another one. So these are some of the possibilities that you might have, that you might resonate with as your parts of you that are still childlike. And it's not so much that we're going to lose this part, or that we want to get rid of this part. We actually want to incorporate the magic and the innocence and the hopefulness of the child and the positive qualities that these archetypes bring. But what they're typically managing for us is that fear of abandonment, because to a child, the biggest kind of darkest thing that could happen would be to be abandoned by your family, and to be left alone would be the most scary thing ever. So our child manages that by figuring out how to survive in the family you've been born into, or the people around that are looking after you. You have to adapt so that you are not abandoned. So that's what your child is busy doing. And sometimes if we don't have a chance to be parented or, given that sense of a safe place as we grow up, we can end up still having parts of ourselves that could be running the show and running our decision making, even in adulthood, that are coming from this place of, oh my gosh, don't abandon me. And I feel like, now, especially this kind of, governmental coercion to do things is related in some way to, the main population kind of having this fear of being abandoned, of being left out, of being, left behind, not being able to be treated in hospital or whatever the thing is. And so we have this management system that says, we have to, pacify our parental figure, whether that's a real parent or a pseudo parent figure. And so we come up with all sorts of adaptations. We might become hermit-like. We might become codependent. We might become people-pleasing. We might, create fantasy world that we live in more of the time. We might become an adult child, like look after people so that we don't get told. We might become invisible. We might do that to ward off being invisible is better than being abandoned. Is kind of, so in a sense, we're creating something that works, that keeps us looked after, but it also doesn't allow us to come from a different place when we're looking for, the relationships that we want. If you are inner childlike in most of your choices, what is a child mostly looking for? Well, any child is mostly looking for a parent figure. And how often do we see that in relationship choices, that we end up looking for a father figure or a mother figure, or, somebody who's looking to us to parent them. So we end up having a lot of times our relationships are based on this child archetype. So it's important to recognize that, to recognize and honor our adaptations that we had to make as young people, as young children, and realize that we may not have to be making those adaptations now. We may be able to come into some of our other archetypes, some other parts of ourselves that are more empowered, that are acting from a different place, that might be able to come from a place of wholeness, or from our intention to offer our gifts in the world. For me, I have things like the visionary, the artist, the healer. So I like to sometimes choose those archetypes to come from and see what are my relationship matches with those archetypes, rather than my wounded child or my orphan child who's looking for a parent. So I might come, as a visionary, I might be drawn to other visionaries, and then we create something really amazing. I might be, as an artist, drawn to beauty, drawn to nature, drawn to different things. And I can start to live my life with, magnetic attraction that draws other people to me that are also working from that kind of different place. Like, I don't want to draw a bunch of wounded children to me, really, unless I am a mother archetype and I want to mother everyone. And that's okay. Again, none of these are wrong, but we want to be aware of what we are calling in our relationships, because if you always feel like you end up mothering your partner, or mothering everybody around you, and feeling exhausted and disappointed that all your relationships end up like that, you want to start looking at, why is it that you're calling that in? Is that how you had to get value when you were a kid? You got value by mothering your mother, perhaps. Maybe you had to grow up young. You looked after your mother, and that gave you a place in your family, gave you value. People wanted you for that. And then it becomes a habitual pattern, and it carries on. And so we end up as adults, repeating those same dynamics in our relationships, and then wondering why we can't find, an equal partnership in our lives. And this is often why, because we are coming from, these places of childlike, desires, and wanting to not be abandoned. So a couple questions that you could ask yourself if you are resonating with this and you're thinking, I need to think about this. what was your primary experience in childhood? So you could try doing a little writing about that. Pause the video if you're watching this later and try writing a little bit about what was your primary experience. I listed off at the beginning of the video. You can go back and listen to the different types of archetypal child personalities that have been kind of outlined. There's probably others that you could come up with. I mean, for me personally, I did this exercise yesterday and I think I was kind of ignored, not noticed, criticized, perhaps like hated. That might be a bit strong, but that was kind of what I felt. Abandoned maybe by peers. I know as I was growing up, I didn't fit in very easily. Maybe rejected by peers. I was loved and appreciated by teachers. I was good in school and I paid attention. So you might want to write down, like, what was your experience in your family? What was your experience with other kids in school? And you might come up with, for me, the invisible child. I wasn't seen that much for myself. The wounded child, the orphan child didn't really fit in. Those types of archetypes resonate for me, and I've done some work around that. So, you could ask yourself, how did I get value as a kid in my family? By doing that. And, I was ignored or sort of not noticed. And I kept quiet. I got value by being a good girl, quiet, not causing problems. I got noticed and valued for being good in school. So that was a big draw. I got noticed for, what else did I put here? Doing what other people want. That was something that gave value, like the other person could direct me. So I was good at letting someone direct me, and different things like that. And that was communicated to me, not always directly, but we can ask, was this threat of abandonment communicated to me? How did my parents perhaps, or my caregivers kind of tell me that I might be abandoned if I didn't do X, Y, or Z? And, it might be criticism. They criticize you if you're not good in school, i.e., you might be abandoned if you are not a good student. Or they might be judgmental about your sexuality or about, how colorful how you like to dress or whatever. So it's like, if you don't conform to my ideas of proper behavior, you will be abandoned. If you weren't kind of the mediator, if you were the mediator in your family and you actually had a different opinion, that wasn't acceptable, right? So it was communicated to you that you need to go along with and make peace with everyone, but you don't get to have a say. That's communicated to you as well. So how did you adapt to that to have value in your family and survive to avoid abandonment? So these are some questions that can come if you do some writing about this. Just ponder it. You don't want to get overly triggered about your childhood if you had a really horrible childhood. Just go gently into this territory. And I highly recommend that you also check out my website or, do a call with me. Let's talk about your particular situation and see if we fit as a guide. It's helpful to have a therapist or a guide, mentor, coach, someone that kind of walk through this murky territory of childhood with you. But you can see how we can continue to recreate these patterns from childhood over and over and over again, because this is what we know, this is what we're used to. And until we have new psychological or even mystical options, until we know some other options, we will just continue to be replaying these patterns. If you are the caregiver, you're going to be a caregiver and you're going to act out that role to have value and to be needed until you learn that there's other parts of yourself, that there's other value that you can create in yourself or for yourself by using other parts of yourself, other parts that might be more empowered, that might have different, matches, have different people drawn to you. So one big aha moment for me was reading actually this line that anyone and anything can abandon you. And how do you want to relate to that? So I know that's maybe not what we all want to hear, that, we're like, no, I've got a partner that will never abandon me. I've got a friend, or my kid will never abandon me. But the truth is, anyone or anything can abandon you. And it might not be a choice. Something could happen, an accident could happen. Somehow you could be abandoned. So this is a truth that no one can guarantee that you will not be abandoned by someone. So how do we want to relate to that? Do we want to relate in a childlike way of complete overwhelm, of complete, oh my God, like I can't survive without this other person, right? Because as a kid, you actually do need a family, you do need caretakers. But now that we're an adult, we actually have other options. We can create other choices, and we can redo our magnetics by mystically reparenting ourselves. And I love that phrase, mystically reparenting ourselves, because it gives us so much power, so much possibility in our healing journey to, look at how can I mother myself? How can I hold myself in a fatherly way? How can I help my inner child to deal with the uncertainty and the unknown of the world around me? How can I not abandon myself? And that is a really big question for those of us that have had trauma or abuse or betrayal. The big question is, how can I not betray myself first and foremost? So that when I am relating to other people, I am drawing in other people that are able to be present, that are able to be intimate, that are able to be honest, that are able to have integrity, that are able to commit. All of these things that we want in relationships, we have to learn to do with ourselves and with our own inner child first, and to kind of parent ourselves. So if this piques your interest, this is actually a fairly significant part of my program that I run for women. It's called The Body Leads the Way. You can check it out on my website, pleasureforhealth.com. You can look up transformational coaching, and it's there. The Body Leads the Way. There's a couple of testimonial videos. You can read about some people that have done the work. I honestly can say that I haven't worked with a single woman that has not transformed her relationships, transformed the people that she's attracting to her. And it is actually phenomenal to watch this magical kind of transformation, to take what was a fear of our inner child, to hold that fear, to find parts of ourselves that are able to create and hold new different magnetics, different attraction forces in a new way, in a more empowered way, is, it's life-changing, because now you can get on with actually doing your work. Because if we are living out of a fear of abandonment, and we're living from our child is making our choices, we're never going to have the courage to go for what we want. We're never going to have that courage to go out on a limb on our own, start a business, start a new relationship. Any kind of change is going to feel overwhelming. So if we want something different, we really do have to get to know ourselves in this different way. And that is what I love helping people do. So I offer any one of you watching this video a free breakthrough call. No catches. Let's just talk for an hour and get really clear about, what was your childhood experience? Do some work on this, and then, book a call and tell me what resonated for you. What was your childhood experience? How did you adapt? And how did you get value? And what do you want now in your life now? And how can we get you there? So hopefully this has been enlightening. I hope you do take the opportunity to write some of those answers, that the questions that we went through today. I personally found it quite enlightening just to do in a few minutes here in my journal. And, I do this work regularly, but of course we always get new layers, which is always the fun of it. So reach out, book a call, follow me. I have a blog. We have a women's group on Facebook, Women Healing from Emotional Abuse with Power, Passion, and Pleasure. Come on in and, tell your story, get some support, feel held. There's lots of videos like this here, so take a look around at all the other videos. Lots of topics to do with this. And I look forward to hopefully chatting to you soon.